Imagine traveling to a strange place with no map and just the stars and sky to guide you. Imagine what it would be like to run through miles and miles of treacherous woods for days at a time. Imagine hiding in tiny spaces while men with hunting dogs tried to find you. And if they did, you would be beaten. Those were just some of the dangers enslaved people endured as they attempted their escape to freedom. This is the story of a woman who won freedom for herself and hundreds of other people. This is the story of Harriet Tubman and her escape to freedom. Harriet Ross was born an enslaved person in Dorchester, Maryland, around 1820. An enslaved person is someone who is owned by and works for another person. Enslaved people did not get paid for the work they did. They were bought and sold, just like property. When Harriet was born, slavery had existed in America for about 200 years. Hundreds of thousands of Africans were taken from their homes in Africa. After being captured, they were chained, put on ships, and brought to America. But people's views on slavery were beginning to change. Many people believed that slavery was wrong. The states in the North began to put limits on slavery. Also, in the Northern economy, manufacturing was much more important. Immigrant men and women worked in factories. The Northern economy did not depend on enslaved workers. In the Southern states, however, things were different. Cotton was an important crop in the South. It took lots of workers to grow and harvest cotton. Enslaved people provided the manpower to get the work done. Slavery was important to the plantation owners and the Southern economy. Most Southerners didn't want slavery to end. That's what life was like in America when Harriet was a child. She lived in a small one-room cabin with her mom, dad, and 9 brothers and sisters. Harriet and her entire family worked on a plantation or large farm. She began working when she was just 6 years old. One of Harriet's jobs was to carry heavy buckets of water to enslaved people who worked in the fields. When Harriet was about 7 years old, she was sent away from her family to another plantation. Life was very hard for young Harriet. Harriet's new owners did not treat her very well. She was fed scraps of food, and they made her sleep on the floor with no blanket. Harriet kept warm by sticking her feet in the ashes of the fireplace. The woman Harriet worked for was never happy with the work Harriet did around her home, so she sent Harriet to work outside, setting traps for muskrats. The job required Harriet to stand in a cold river all day long. It was hard work, but she enjoyed being outside with nature, watching the animals and the free-flowing river. Over the next few years, Harriet was sent to different plantations where she had to do housework. One job Harriet had was taking care of the slave owner's baby. She would have to stay up all night and rock the cradle. If the baby cried, Harriet would get whipped. Actually, anytime her owners weren't happy, Harriet would be punished. One day, Harriet decided to run away. She was tired of being whipped, but after several days, she went back to her owner. Eventually, she was sent back to the plantation with her family. And even though she was young, she was forced to work in the fields. The work was hard, but Harriet enjoyed working outside. She enjoyed seeing the clouds in the sky and the birds fly by. She would often wonder what it would be like not to be an enslaved person, but to be free. Other African American enslaved people dreamed of freedom too, and many tried to escape slavery, but few made it. They were either captured or killed. As Harriet got older, she began to hear stories about enslaved people escaping from the South and traveling north to freedom on the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was not a real train, and it wasn't underground. It was a system of secret trails and hiding places enslaved people followed to get to freedom. Harriet asked lots of questions about the Underground Railroad, but no one really knew anything about it. Harriet knew in her heart that one day she would escape. Harriet knew it would be important to learn how to survive in the woods. Over time, her dad taught her about the woods and swamps. He taught her which plants and berries were safe to eat and which could be used as medicines. Harriet learned that moss only grows on the north side of trees. That would help her to keep moving north towards freedom. Harriet got married to John Tubman when she was 24 years old. Her husband didn't want to hear about escaping, so Harriet kept her secret of being free to herself. One day, while working in the fields, a woman who opposed slavery gave Harriet a piece of paper with the name and address of someone who could help her escape to the north, where she would be free. The piece of paper was Harriet's ticket to the Underground Railroad. That night, Harriet wrapped up some food and took off to find the first conductor on the Underground Railroad. Conductors were people who supplied the passengers or enslaved people with maps and other things they would need for their journey north. Harriet would have to travel to several railroad stations. Stations were a series of homes, barns, and churches where the enslaved people could hide. People who ran the stations were called station masters. The journey was very secret and very dangerous. Slave owners sometimes hired slave catchers to track down runaways and bring them back. Plus, anyone caught helping an enslaved person escape could be beaten or killed. The journey for Harriet was long and hard. She would have to travel 90 miles north to the Mason-Dixon line. The Mason-Dixon line was the boundary line between Virginia and Pennsylvania. Along the way, Harriet met several station masters and conductors. They disguised her, hid her, gave her food and clothing, and helped on her dangerous journey north. The last station master gave Harriet a piece of paper with the word Pennsylvania written on it. Harriet couldn't read, but he told her to look for a sign with the same letters written on it. When she arrived there, she would be free. Harriet took off into the woods towards Pennsylvania, but before she got there, she once again heard horses and bloodhounds. Slave catchers were in the area. Harriet hid quietly and waited for them to leave. Soon after, she found the sign that said Pennsylvania. Harriet Tubman had made it to freedom. Harriet made a promise to herself that one day she would go back for her family. Between the years 1850 and 1861, Harriet made 19 trips back down south. She had to sneak all the way down and all the way back. Over the years, she helped over 300 enslaved people to freedom. she became one of the greatest conductors of the Underground Railroad. By 1861, tensions between the North and South became so great that both sides went to war. It was known as the Civil War. Harriet became a nurse, spy, and a scout for the Union Army of the North. During the war, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which set all enslaved people free. Harriet's dream of freedom for herself and all enslaved people became a reality after the Civil War ended in 1865. Harriet Tubman settled in Auburn, New York. She continued to speak out for freedom. She also began a home and provided health care for old and sick elderly enslaved people until she passed away in 1913. Harriet was a true American hero who fought for freedom and civil rights her entire life, and through her courageous actions helped to bring down the system of slavery in the United States.